Often titled the father of comedy, Aristophanes is the oldest surviving comedic playwright. As profound as vulgar, his plays reveal ancient Athenian values, ideology, and controversies. Jeering at and referencing sex, gender, religion, politicians, history, other playwrights, and morality, he is now, perhaps, even more irreverent and funny than ever before. Peace. The play begins with two servants feeding manure, or poop, to a giant dung beetle. The insect is as large as a horse. One of the servants is making the dung patties, and the other is carrying them to the beetle. At one point, one of the servants asks the audience if anyone knows where he can buy a nose with no nostrils. Another pretty funny joke occurs when one of the servants says to the other,
"I expect some young smart arse in the audience is saying, 'What's happening? What is it with the beetle?'"
The other responds,
"Yeah, and the bloke who thinks he's smart says, 'I bet he is getting at Cleon how much the guy likes to eat fancy shit.'"
Aristophanes is always making fun of Cleon, but not so much in this play. One of the servants explains that their master, Trygaeus, intends to use the beetle as a Pegasus. He will ride it up to the realm of the gods and urge Zeus to stop the war of the Greeks. The master then shows up complaining about Zeus and the gods' lack of assistance for allowing such an overly prolonged war. Before setting forth in his journey, Trygaeus' two young daughters appear and question him about his plan. Their interchange is pretty funny, but inconsequential. For example, when the daughters ask him why he simply did not use an actual winged horse, the father tells them that this way he only needs half the food rations. Meaning, he can recycle what he himself has already eaten. Before leaving, Trygaeus tells the audience,
"As for the rest of you, for whom I'm doing this thing, you mustn't fart or shit for at least 3 days. When I am airborne, I don't want the beetle picking up the pong. He'll toss me headlong and go swooping down to graze."
As may be imagined, several more jokes are made on the subject. Trygaeus' beetle flies successfully. He arrives at the house of Zeus. He knocks on the door and Hermes, who is startled by the gruesome giant beetle, answers. There is a joke wherein Trygaeus answers Hermes' inquiry on behalf of the beetle. He says his name is Scumpodius, he hails from Scumpotia Magna, and his father was Scumbot Sr. Long story made short, in the end Hermes explains that the gods are fed up with humanity, or at least the Greeks. Thus they have left war, the god of war, in their place and gone somewhere else. Hermes himself is merely there to fetch something he forgot. The reason why the gods have given up on humanity is because every time they tried to establish peace, the Greeks would find an excuse to keep fighting. What is most relevant is that Hermes explains to Trygaeus that the goddess Peace has been captured in a cave by the god War, and therefore the hero of the play makes it his duty to set the goddess free. Trygaeus hides as the god War arrives, and he witnesses how by literally preparing a meal, War cooks misfortune on the Greeks. Yes, jocularly, with every ingredient he adds to his cooking pot, he mentions the city that will be receiving the suffering. War tells his assistant, Riot, to fetch him a pestle with which he may smash and mix the various ingredients. Riot leaves and returns twice as he fails to find a pestle in either Athens or Sparta. As for the Athenians, the reason is that the leather-selling jerk is gone. This, of course, is a reference to Cleon. Let me explain that two real, or historical events, are related to this remark. First, Cleon has died. He was killed in combat. He was, perhaps, the most successful proponent of continued conflict. Second, a peace has been proposed. It has not been voted on yet by either the Athenian people, they had a true democracy, or the Spartans' elected representatives, they had an oligarchy, though it would be called a representative democracy nowadays. War and Riot exit the scene as they must make a pestle of their own. Once they are gone, Trygaeus emerges from his hiding place and calls upon all manner or types of citizens to help him dislodge Peace from her prison. As he does this, he sings a eulogy to the value of peace. Let there be no doubt, Aristophanes was trying to convince his fellow citizens to vote for the proposed armistice. I should note that in the end neither the Spartans nor the Athenians agree to the treaty and the war continues. At this point, the chorus of citizens enters. They all sing and dance as they try to move the boulder, sealing the entrance to the cavern where the goddess Peace is trapped. No sooner do they begin the work that Hermes returns and claims that Zeus has decreed death to anyone that sets Peace free. The chorus argues with Hermes by reminding him or pointing out all of the offerings they have made to him in the past. Subsequently, Trygaeus argues that the Olympians are falling for the moon and the sun's trap. These latter ones are barbarian gods, and they wish the Greeks death so they may reign supreme. All this merely softens Hermes, but in the end, he is won over by the offering of a golden cup filled with wine. Once he is drunk, Hermes even encourages the chorus hard work. Trygaeus in turn comments and criticizes on how much each city or each kind of citizen is contributing to the peace effort. None contribute more than the farmers. I should note that the Athenian farmers were particularly hurt as Athens was essentially besieged for 30 years as it had to adopt the military strategy of an island. Alas, unable to access their own countryside, the people of Athens had to rely on their overseas empire, importing all their food and raw resources. More explanation of this would require a long digression. Back to the story, beautiful Peace is at last set free along with two, also beautiful, female attendants, cornucopia and festival. Hermes then goes into a historical explanation, that is interpretation, of what started the war. Surprisingly, he lays some of the blame on Pericles as the author of the decree against Megara. Long story made short, he ends by accusing Cleon, at which point Trygaeus interrupts, vainly claiming that it is improper to speak ill of a dead man. He says,
So whatever you may choose to say about him, bastard that he was while born, a slimy mouthing fraud, snitch, and agitating trouble stirrer, will be slander of your own.
Subsequently, the goddess Peace whispers in Trygaeus' ear. Hermes explains that she does not want to be heard by the theater's audience because she is mad at them. Nonetheless, by Trygaeus replies, it is clear that she dislikes many of the Athenian people's decisions, and she complains about a specific senator. I should note that Peace is probably portrayed by a statue as she does not speak. Hermes instructs Trygaeus to marry Cornucopia and to bring festival before the Senate. He tries to call on his beetle, but jocularly Hermes informs him that Zeus has taken it, harnessed it to a car, and is using it to carry thunderbolts. Several remarks are made about the goddess's extreme beauty. Upon returning to Earth, after telling his servant about his journey, Trygaeus tells him to prepare a bath and nuptial bed for him and Cornucopia. He is very aroused and wishes to make love to her as soon as possible. At this point, the servant says,
Well, I wouldn't give 3 cents for any gods who go in for pimping the way we mortals do.
Likewise, later on, the chorus says,
What an enviable old man, now to be a youth again, fragrantly perfumed with myrrh.
I agree. I can't wait to stick to her and get my hands on those fantastic breasts.
Luckier than those spinning tops, the Carcinus boys.
And rightly so, for I'm the bloke who rode away on a beetle's back, and for the Greeks restored the joys of living in the countryside air, to sleep and fuck without a care.
Once again, several remarks are made about the goddess's attractiveness. The servant cannot keep himself from running his fingers all over Festival's body. Trygaeus has her disrobe and she stands naked before the audience. Several more sexual remarks are made as they prepare an offering in honor of these deities. Basically, the servant runs back and forth, not only slaughtering a lamb, but also throwing seeds and water at the audience. Eventually, a seer, an alleged prophet, arrives. Trygaeus refers to him depreciatingly. He calls him a prophecy profiter. He is interested in the possibility of profiting from the religious offering. Trygaeus refuses him, and the fraud laughs at them for thinking that they could ever attain peace. A rather merit-worthy interchange ensues. First, the false prophet speaks in metaphor. He says that war will not cease until a wolf makes love to a sheep. Trygaeus responds with,
So what do we do instead? Never stop from waging war? Draw lots to see which side is going to be more maimed? when all the time we could rule the world together and enjoy the profit of cooperation.
This point was made by basically all philosophers in ancient Greece, if only the Greeks had united. The fraud continues his remarks with,
Never shall you tutor the crab to walk in a straight line.
Later he adds,
Never shall you succeed in smoothing the hedgehog's spines.
I must admit, I love a good metaphor. In the end, Trygaeus proclaims a line from none other than Homer.
Only an outcast without heart is the man who ever wants war.
When the seer asks for some of the food they are cooking, Trygaeus and his servant repeat the false prophet's own metaphor and chase him away with blows. It is curious because Aristophanes essentially makes fun of the gods, all the while chastising those who take advantage of religion. In my opinion, Aristophanes cannot be understood in any way as a conservative. In fact, this critical secularism, the most praiseworthy element of Western civilization, is antithetical to traditionalism. A large crowd gathers for Trygaeus and Cornucopia's wedding. In the subsequent series, various of the guests come up to Trygaeus. First, a sickle seller praises and thanks him for bringing peace and improving his business. After him, the owners of the ancient weapons industry. Sellers of helmet, breastplates, bugles, and spears all complain about peace. Several jokes are made on their greed, their willingness to profit from the dead and misery of others. As with other plays, and I do believe that this is important to understand, Aristophanes complains and critiques Athens a lot. However, this is not to be understood as proof that our own current oligarchical system of voting for people is better than a real, Athenian-style democracy. Rather, if he saw such flaws in Athens, how much worse would he complain of our own system? In the end, the beautiful Cornucopia, dressed in her wedding dress, is led into his house by a jubilant Trygaeus as the chorus, and the rest of the characters cheer for them. In the next play, the birds of the world will rebel, construct their own city, separating humanity from the gods. Don't miss it. Now, to entice you to watch the completion of this series, consider the line.
Democracy requires choosing the trustworthy, and since mortals may only trust God, and God is fate, and fate is chance, ergo trust random selection.
If you enjoy or gain from my aphorisms, know that I have thousands. I will be writing books with short thematic essays composed out of aphorisms. These essays are profound and intriguing yet easy to read. For very cheap copies, look up Protagoras Pause in the Amazon website. I repeat, Protagoras Pause, that's my name.